In the late 90s, Nintendo had a problem. They had the hardware, they had the plumber, and they had the throne. But in a small farmhouse in Twycross, England, a group of developers at Rareware were about to do the unthinkable. They were going to out-Mario Mario. But the game we know today, the bear, the bird, and the endless collecting of golden puzzle pieces almost didn't exist. It started as an RPG named Project Dream, a game so ambitious it literally broke the hardware it was built on. This is the story of how a failing role-playing game was scrapped, stripped for parts, and rebuilt into the most polished platformer of the 64-bit era. From the mystery of Stop and Swop to the genius Grant Kirkhope's dynamic soundtrack, we're diving into the development of Banjo-Kazooie. To understand Banjo, we have to talk about Edson. In 1995, Rare was riding high on the success of Donkey Kong Country. They wanted to push the Super Nintendo to its absolute limit with a game called Project Dream. It used the same pre-rendered 3D tech as Donkey Kong Country, but it was a massive RPG with a complex plot about a boy, a wooden sword, and a group of pirates led by Captain Black-Eye. But there was a problem. The industry was moving toward full 3D, and the Super Nintendo just couldn't keep up. So the team moved the project to the upcoming Nintendo 64. But even then, the game felt sluggish. It lacked the snap of a Nintendo title, the scope was too big, and the fun was buried under too much dialogue and menu-heavy combat. Then, in 1996, Super Mario 64 landed like a tactical nuke. It changed the rules of 3D movement overnight. Rare looked at the pirate RPG and then realized it felt like a relic before it was even finished. They didn't just need to tweak the game, they needed to start from scratch. They kept the character Banjo, who was originally a side character in Dream, but stripped everything else away. The sword was gone, the pirates were benched. Inspired by the fluidity of Mario, Rare spent the next 17 months obsessing over one thing: how it felt to move. They realized that if the player was going to spend 40 hours exploring, this simple act of jumping, climbing, and soaring had to be perfect. With the technical foundation set, Rare needed to give the game a soul, and they found it in a very British sense of humour. Unlike the earnest heroics of Link or the silent cheerfulness of Mario, Banjo and Kazooie were a comedy duo. You had the polite, slightly dim-witted bear paired with a cynical, trash-talking bird who lived in his backpack. It was Fawlty Towers meets Looney Tunes. This personality extended to the very voices of the characters. To save memory, Rare didn't use full voice acting. Instead, they used short-looped vocal samples, grunts, squeaks and squawks. Changing the pitch changed everything. This gibberish spoke volumes, creating a distinct sonic identity that fans can recognize with their eyes closed. But the real wizardry was happening in the ears of the player. Composer Grant Kirkhope didn't just write catchy tunes, he pioneered dynamic music. As you move from the hub world into a snowy cave or dive underwater, the melody stays the same, but the instrumentation shifts in real time. A jaunty banjo track instantly becomes a whimsical woodwind arrangement or a dampened, bubbly underwater waltz. This was Rareware's secret sauce. They turned the Collect-a-thon, a genre often criticized for being tedious, into a dopamine machine. Every note, every jinjo, and every jiggy was accompanied by a burst of color and a triumphant sound. They didn't just make a game, they made a digital playground patted you on the back for every single discovery. But for many players, the story of Banjo-Kazooie didn't end when the credits rolled. It ended with a mystery that would haunt the internet for a decade: Stop and Swop. Hidden in the game's ending were images of unreachable items, legendary colored eggs, and a glowing ice key. The hint was simple: if you found them, they could be swapped into the sequel. The plan was genius and insane. You would literally turn your Nintendo 64 off, rip the cartridge out, and slam Banjo-Tooie in within seconds. The Nintendo 64's memory would hold the data just long enough to transfer the items. But at the last second, Nintendo changed the hardware, shortening the memory window and killing the feature. Rare had to lock the items away behind cheat codes, leaving a generation of kids staring at ice walls they could never break. So, where does that leave the band bird today? After Microsoft acquired Rare in 2002, the duo went quiet aside from the divisive vehicle builder Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. But the DNA of this game is everywhere. You see it in the Collect-a-thon revival 10 years later, and you heard it in the roar of the crowd when Banjo finally joined Super Smash Bros. Roster in 2019. Banjo-Kazooie wasn't just a Mario clone, it was a masterclass in personality, technical grit, and British charm. It proved that sometimes the best things come from the wreckage of a failed dream. Because while Project Dream died, it gave us something much better: a bear, a bird, and a legacy that 25 years later still feels like home.